something that my grandmother taught me. I owe everything to her. She taught me that the only eternal thing is land, because it was here thousands of years since the start of Earth, and it will continue to be here until the end of the world.
1,000 miles from the Mediterranean, south to Aswan. At Aswan, we accompanied President Sadat aboard his launch on a cruise of the river below the high dam. A cruise that took us past ancient Nubian villages up there on the cliffs. The Nubians are one of the two basic peoples who formed the population of ancient Egypt and modern Egypt, the others being the lighter-skinned Egyptians.
You know, when you look at the fertility of the lower Nile Valley and then the harshness of the land here,
Right.
one wonders, how have they survived for these thousands of years?
You may be amazed to know when we heightened the old dam, some of their villages were flooded, but they wouldn't leave their villages except when they found that they will be flooded. The rest, who are not flooded like these, they stayed here. And then one asks, how can they manage to live on such rocks only? Again, it is nature. No one in my country, Egypt, likes the land like the Nubians here.
Do the Nubians, as the people in the lower Nile, do they cling to their ancient customs as well?
For sure. Their dances, their language, they have a complete different language. It is not written, but they use it between themselves. They have their, as I told you, their dances, their language, their traditions, marvelous customs.
Performed today look as if they were choreographed from ancient temple carvings. These young dancers have organized a troupe that performs for visitors in Aswan. We accompany them to a special performance in one of the ancestral villages where they continue to live.
These islands that they live on here, the Elephantine Islands,
Yes.
also provided the granite, the Aswan granite, that
Yes.
the pharaohs quarried and sent downriver to build their temples and their tombs.
Right.
Do you still quarry this granite?
Yes. It is one of the most beautiful granite in the world.
Downstream, 150 miles from the Aswan quarries, lies a staggering example of ancient stone-cutting genius, most likely toppled by early Christians. This is the Colossus of Ramesses the Great at Thebes. Modern scientists estimate that the original stone weighed more than 1,000 tons. There was hardly any limit to the scale of their ambitions. This obelisk, abandoned in the quarry, remains one of the tourist spectacles of Aswan. Another abandoned work is this massive sarcophagus. It probably dates from the period of Roman occupation around the time of Christ. A few hundred feet away, local workmen still cut the unyielding, coarse-grained Aswan granite. But they work on a far more modest scale than their ancestors.
The same rocks, the same granite, we still quarry it. But last year, starting from last year, we started a joint venture with the Italians to work on much more new technology.
Do you export the granite?
Yes, in a little quantity, but after this joint venture that I told you about, I think it will be exported on a larger scale.
speaking of the Nile and its beauties, of course, we're here in this lake formed by the low dam that was built in 1903 and the high dam up above us here that was built beginning in 1960 or 60 or something.
Exactly.
Right. And, of course, where we're going, to Philae, the temple at Philae is not only a ancient wonder, but in a sense a wonder of the modern world and modern technology, because when the low dam was built 77 years ago now, it began to fill in this lake and covered Philae on its original island.
Right.
And you excavated it, moved the entire thing to an island that you made look just like the other one. We can see it, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
As we get up there. Some of the work's still going. It's not quite completed yet.
Quite right, quite right, quite right.
It also is the kind of life that Sadat knows from his own peasant childhood on the same tenant farm that he now owns.
Since I was 3 years old, I walked on this same road, and this same canal was here. 57 years now, and it will continue until eternity, I think.
When you walk these fields today, you see life much as it was in ancient Egypt. Many of the same traditions, the same methods, even the same devices.
صباح الخير يا رجال. I used to sit here as one of those two men, and early at dawn, because we started early. You know, this is called tambour. There is some screw in it, and it brings the water from the canal to the land here. Small canals. It is prepared only for the small canals.
How many hours would you sit there on that screw?
Every shift is 2 hours. And we use not only to irrigate our land, but the work here since the start is collective. We don't have tambour for every farmer here. We have 6 or 7 only in the village. So we make a timetable, and then we start irrigating collectively all our land.
So really it was the fertility of the Nile, the need to utilize the Nile by irrigation that created this first form of government in the world here in Egypt.
Exactly. It is exactly like Herodot said. Egypt is the gift of the Nile.
Even with those ancient irrigation methods, the Nile produced a bounty. Grain and flax and papyrus, the paper of the ancient world. This was the wealth of the pharaohs, the goods they traded for Lebanon's timber, Africa's ivory and gold. The Egyptians divided the Nile's annual cycle, flood, harvest, drought, into 12 months, establishing the first calendar. So the Nile gave man his sense of time.
Much more than this, the Nile has given my people also the sense of eternity, that the human is immortal, that there is a second life. And as I told you, when Nile gave the country prosperity, must have given them this fine touch of art to build for the second life, because they consider that the body may perish, but the soul will.
The Greek and the Roman period here really marked the beginning of Egypt's intensive contacts with the West. In all of that time, of that intensive contact, who ended up influencing whom the most?
Well, it is a tradition we are very proud of. Egypt always absorbs whoever invaded Egypt, and never Egypt was absorbed by anyone. Really, it is a pride of us. Well, as you see, Egypt survived all those, Greeks and Romans, this fine architecture, this fine civilization, this fine monument shows who survived the other.
Egypt survived, but her ancient culture did not. Stable and conservative, it had become stagnant, and dynamic new ideas were coming in from outside. The ancient gods were abandoned, their images defaced. The ancient language and hieroglyphic writing totally forgotten. Egypt began 2,000 years of foreign domination by Arabs, then Turks, finally French and British. But of all the outside forces, the most powerful, the most lasting, was not a ruler nor an army, but a new religion, the faith of Islam. Brought in by conquerors from Arabia in the 7th century A.D., Islam offered the promise of everlasting life in the company of God, offered it even to those who could not afford to have their bodies preserved. It was soon embraced by the majority of Egyptians. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, is modern Egypt's basic law. Though the modern president exercises extraordinary political power, like his ancient predecessors, the pharaohs, he does not serve as the spiritual head of the religious establishment as they did. He speaks about Islam simply as a devout believer.
In Islam, and this is something I think which gives life honor. In Islam it is stated that only in life we are in a transitional period until we reach the eternity, where will be no human atrocities, no bad deeds, all this in eternity. All of us, we will live forever. And life is considered in Islam a transitional period. For that, it's very essential in Islam that you must act so that you can win the eternity.
The life looks to an outsider from the Western world to be terribly poor, terribly mean. It doesn't look like there's any opportunity for joy. How do they enjoy themselves?
Well, it is like this. Here, from sunrise to sunset, we are in the fields. Well, this is something that I can't describe to you. The beauty of it, from sunrise to sunset in the fields, working, irrigating, playing, and then at sunset we return and have our meal, our main meal. We are not accustomed to stay after 8 o'clock at all. We sleep very early and we wake up very early. For recreation or for amusement or anything like that, it is either someone who is came to the village to recite Quran or so, and we gather around him, or in a wedding. If there is a wedding in the village, we used to go and dance, and we sing the very primitive songs and so.
This temple here at Philae represents the twilight of ancient Egypt, the beginning of the end of its richness and its power. Must all superpowers have a decline like this?
It must be. It must be. It must be a cycle that is continuing. And I think the time has come that Egypt here will provide something to the whole world like it provided the first civilization.
in all humbleness. It will not be in the field of technology, because we can't say that we can give the world any new technology. On the contrary, we want the new technology here. But in the morals, in principles, in nature, in faith, in love of beauty, all this, I think it will start from here again.
Sadat himself has offered a kind of moral example to the world in his risk-taking efforts to bring peace to the Middle East. It's hard to say whether he will succeed and whether Egypt can continue to provide an example in the future. But Egypt's past surely will continue to illuminate the story of the human race, will continue to inspire any who come here seeking hope for its survival.
My grandmother taught me, Walter, the man will only be a man when he builds his house and his tomb. You see, the philosophy behind this is that you shall be independent. You have your own house, you have your tomb, so you are independent. Whatever comes, well, you are going to face it. If you live, it is okay, you are in your house. If you die, they will find a tomb for you. They will not ask anyone to take you and bury you there also. So these are the philosophy of the old traditions in Egypt here.